Good day, and welcome to Teddy Talks to Parents, where expert advice meets everyday parenting. In today's discussion, we'll be diving into the scourge of child trafficking and abductions currently plaguing South African society. We will touch on why child trafficking is so pervasive in South Africa, what you need to be aware of as parents, and what you can do to protect your children. We are joined today by Dr. Shaheda Omar, Clinical Director here at the Teddy Bear Foundation. Good day, Dr. Omar. Thank you so much for joining us.
Good day to you and all the listeners out there.
So, Dr. Omar, we have been witnessing some horrifying realities for children in South Africa recently, with the abduction of Joslin Smith from her home in Saldanha Bay and the more recent abduction of 2 teenagers from Brits while on their way to school. So why is child trafficking and abduction so pervasive in South Africa?
So I think we need to appreciate and understand that yes, it's pervasive in South Africa, but this is a global phenomenon. And if we look at the current crisis that we are faced with, that children are a vulnerable population group, they are marginalized, they're not in a position to fight back, to stop any kind of abduction, kidnapping, or even to stop being violated in any way. Children are often powerless, defenseless, and helpless in situations. So they are a soft target. But we also need to understand that kidnapping of children, your express kidnapping and child trafficking is a lucrative industry. It's quick, easy money, so it's a soft option to extract money from the general public, and therefore children are at huge risk. And I want to say from the onset that it's not only affluent families that are targeted at or whose children are mostly victimized. Yes, certainly they are at a higher risk. We've seen that historically, but we are seeing that more and more middle-class families are also being affected with children being abducted, your express kidnappings, but even where children are being trafficked. I think trafficking occurs across the spectrum, and we find usually children that are online, children who are interacting, engaging online on social media platforms are more likely, are more vulnerable to online sexual exploitation or exploitation with regards to trafficking. So this is a huge risk factor because often children are not cautioned or alerted to the fact that there are so many risk factors, so many dangers, and so many predators that are lurking online, waiting to pounce and prey on innocent children, unbeknown to them that the people they are engaging with are not their age mates, are not, similar to their interests or areas of activities, but actually are people who are impersonating themselves in that fashion and are certainly part of organized syndicates, pedophiles, your sexual predators, your traffickers that belong to the organized syndicates, and look out for children that are engaging online, so luring children, enticing children, and focusing on children's preferences, their interests, their activities, their hobbies, often giving children so much attention where the child feels so special, where the child has never been made to feel so special, even by his or her own parents, because we realize that the multitasking, multi-responsibilities that parents face does not always make it possible to spend or show so much or display so much interest in a child. And this is where your traffickers lure children and ensure that children are recruited, because the way they focus on a child's needs, and they pick up on the vulnerabilities, but also on the inadequacies, the insecurities, the worries, the concerns. And this is something that one needs to be aware of.
Okay, so you've kind of touched on a little bit of technology and social media, but maybe you can paint a bit of a more broad picture of what parents need to avoid and look out for to kind of protect their children and to ensure that they aren't trafficked or abducted.
So I think the most important thing we would like to communicate to parents is, and the key word here is communication. That we understand we're living in a world of advanced and advent technology, which is rapidly increasing at a pace we cannot keep up with. So parents, in order to empower, enrich their children, are giving them devices where they can access information for educational purposes. So, of course, technology, online engagement, the use of the internet certainly is a great asset for children, but it's also one of the greatest risks that children are faced with. So when parents entrust children with these devices, there needs to be communication, there needs to be dialogue around this, but there needs to be ground rules that should be set, and a contract actually drawn between parent and child on the times they are allowed to access, whom they are allowed to communicate or engage with, and when children are on social media like Facebook, Twitter, parents also need to be on those platforms to ensure the safety and protection of their children. But something else that parents also need to be aware of is ensuring that they need to place some software or to filter any kind of inappropriate content that comes through. Now we know that's not foolproof because children are so astute and tech savvy that they can hack the system. But the important thing is actually discussions around the dangers and the opportunities that predators wait for in engaging with children. So parents need to remind children on a daily basis not to post personal information about themselves, send out photos or images of themselves. Providing any personal information is not acceptable, even if it's the name of the school, the place of employment of parents, where they're going on holiday, age, any kind of information, and not actually share any photos of themselves, because we know that the person on the other end is not a friend or an age mate. That person is an opportunistic trafficker, recruiter, perpetrator or predator waiting to lure this child and pounce on this child, only to find that the child is now subjected to victimization. The child has been kidnapped, the child has been trafficked, or the child has been a victim of child labor where they're crossing borders, or the child has been a victim of even organ harvesting. So there are so many potential opportunities that the child may be exposed to because of the online exposure, and that it is key that parents speak to this repeatedly.
Okay, so now a parent is in the horrible situation of their child being abducted. So what do they do? What do they need to do? What is their response?
So the one thing which is most important, the moment a parent discovers that their child is missing and they've checked out, because that is something that parents need to, as part of their engagement, that they need to know the whereabouts of their child at all times, to be able to track, if a child has a device, to be able to track the location of the child for his or her safety. So when the parent is unable to trace the child, unable to determine the whereabouts, if supposedly the child was at a friend's place but the child never arrived there, they need to contact the police immediately. The Family Violence, Child Protection and Sexual Offences Unit, it needs to be done immediately. And even if they are turned away, to say there's a 24-hour period, that is ludicrous, that does not exist on paper, that it has to be reported. They need to send the most recent photos any distinct features or characteristics or marks that the child may have, a birthmark or anything distinct that they could recognize the child or identify the child. So, and also to contact other platforms like Missing Link South Africa, ask SAPS in general to send out a bolo, be on the lookout. So the more reach out there is made, the better the opportunities for the child to be found. And the sooner it is reported, the better, because we are fully aware the way traffickers work. Traffickers and organized syndicates change hands so many times. The victim changes hands so many times that it becomes nearly impossible to identify the whereabouts of that victim.
Okay, so what signs can parents look out for in others to prevent the possible victimization of their children? What are the key kind of characteristics?
So what we are observing and what is being brought to the attention of counselors is parents have found that children spend so much time on their devices, but it's behind closed doors. So, sitting on the internet late at night, early hours of the morning, those are all danger signs, they're warning signs. And you're using coded language. Again, that is something that parents need to be concerned about. But also looking at changes in their behavior, where a child suddenly becomes very withdrawn, or if a child is a victim of sexting, where the child has shared some images of his or her genitalia because of a relationship, and now there's, things are not working out, and there's threats and coercion and a request for payment of some sort, a ransom of some sort, and children then become withdrawn, become depressed, lose interest in activities they've enjoyed before, unable to concentrate, the lack of interest in school activities, sporting activities. So those are all warning signs, and the child isolates himself or herself all the time, refusing to participate in family activities, and not showing, basically appearing to be apathetic.
So how can parents help raise awareness and push for stronger rules and regulations against child trafficking in South Africa?
So I think parents have a huge role to play. Being the primary caregivers, they need to stand up and speak out and speak out and share their experiences with the general public, so other parents are aware and alerted to the risks that children face. And I think if parents turn to SAPS also to ensure that they respond timeously, appropriately and adequately, because often there's delays in the channels of communication, and time is a huge factor in children disappearing. So, and again, with regard to legislation, holding the stakeholders accountable, whether it's SAPS, whether it's health, where examinations have been conducted, whether it's justice, courts where cases are prosecuted. So I think these people need to be held accountable, because if we look at our National Strategic Plan and we look at the 6 pillars, accountability and justice are part of the pillars which people have to account for.
Okay, that is unfortunately all we have time for today. A big thank you to you, Dr. Shaheda Omar, for joining us today.
Thank you.
Yeah, your guidance and advice is always immensely appreciated. Find us next week for more helpful tips and suggestions from your trusted experts. Teddy Talks to Parents is proudly produced by the Teddy Bear Foundation, where children go on their journey to healing. Thank you, and see you next week.